Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Motley Show, where we try to take one of the bigger stories out of news and politics each week, step outside the echo chamber, and see what's really going on and why should we care. Now yesterday there was another mass shooting, where one police officer was killed plus 3 other victims and 9 other people were injured. The assailant then held off the police for about 5 hours until finally giving himself up and now supposedly cooperating with the police. But the thing that puts an extra edge on this particular shooting is it took place at a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs. Now here's a picture of the supposed terrorist. Oh wait, that's not who it is. That's what you'd expect to see when the word terrorist comes up these days. But actually, this is the real picture of the terrorist who attacked the Colorado Springs Planned Parenthood clinic. He's 57-year-old Robert Louis Deere, and reportedly he was carrying an AK-47, which is what he used to kill those people. Now one of the reasons why the standoff lasted so long was not just because he was an active shooter, but because he barricaded himself in a Planned Parenthood clinic, which because of the violence that they've seen over the years, that place is heavily fortified. The glass is bulletproof. They have bulletproof vests inside the clinic in case the staff gets attacked. Whether or not he knew these things going in, he definitely gained an advantage just from the bulletproof windows. Now this is the first attack on an abortion clinic that has resulted in a death since 2009, when Dr. George Tiller was killed in his own church by Scott Roeder, a devoted anti-abortion activist. Now during the early moments of this active shooting, a lot of people who were pro-life decided to take to Twitter and start criticizing the media for saying that it was a Planned Parenthood attack, because at that point, admittedly, it had not been verified that the attack actually took place in the Planned Parenthood clinic. There were some eyewitnesses that said they thought the shooting began at the Chase Bank next door and that then he ran into the Planned Parenthood clinic to barricade himself. So maybe this was possibly a bank robbery gone wrong, and that fit into the narrative of the pro-life people who were on Twitter, because they didn't want to see actual acts of violence being directed at abortion providers because it made them look like they were fermenting this level of violence. But unfortunately for them, once Robert Deere gave himself over and began cooperating with the police, he has since made statements that pretty much solidify this as an attack on Planned Parenthood. He was quoted as saying, "No more baby parts." And he also made a reference to Obama. He also said that he was a lone shooter and that he was not acting with anyone else. But this is very, very early days in that investigation. In fact, very early hours into that. So we'll see what comes out over the next few days. But what we've seen already is that this absolutely was an attack directed at Planned Parenthood due to the fact that they provide abortions for women. Now there is an abortion rights group out there who has been pressuring the Department of Justice to relabel attacks like this on abortion clinics as domestic terrorism, not just lone wolf attacks, not acts of violence or mass shootings, but actual terrorism. And they have a very solid point for why they want that to happen, because this shooting in Colorado Springs falls directly under the umbrella of the most used definition of terrorism, which is this: criminal acts intended or calculated to provoke a state of terror in the general public, a group of persons, or particular persons for political purposes are in any circumstance unjustifiable, whatever the considerations of a political, philosophical, ideological, racial, ethnic, religious, or any other nature that may be invoked to justify them. And that's exactly what this person was trying to do. He was making an ideological stand. He was using terror, the idea that people who perform abortions deserve to die, as a way of pushing his message, which was abortion should be illegal. Now, over the past few months, we've been hearing about more and more of Planned Parenthood clinics being attacked in various different ways, everything from shootings to arson to vandalism. But it wasn't always as active as it is now. The history of it has had hills and valleys. If you go back to 1973, when Roe v. Wade was decided, you can see early on in that first decade where there was a lot of attacks going on. In 1982, one provider and his wife were kidnapped, and 3 clinics in Florida and Virginia were bombed. In 1984 alone, there were 25 bombings of these clinics. In 1993, Dr. David Gunn was shot and killed inside the parking lot of the clinic he worked at. In 1994, a doctor, a clinic escort, and 2 receptionists were killed in 2 different unique incidents. And did you catch that when I said that there was a clinic escort? That's the kind of terror that these clinics live under on a daily basis. They actually have to have people who either volunteer or are hired to walk women who are making their own choice from their cars or from wherever into the clinic and back out to their cars to keep them from being harassed, intimidated, or attacked by anti-abortion protesters. That in itself should speak volumes about the situation. In 1998, a security guard was killed during a bombing. And in October of that year, another doctor, Barnett Slepian, was murdered in his own home. Now, 2 weeks after Dr. Slepian was killed, the Attorney General of the US at the time, Janet Reno, actually formed a task force dedicated to just going after cases like this, where people were targeting healthcare clinics and abortion providers. By 2012, the number of cases that were dedicated in that task force to just abortion clinics actually had fallen to only 2%. So the violence had definitely ebbed off. But then came the Center for Medical Progress, which, while it sounds completely benign and something that you would expect every doctor to be a part of, it is nothing more than an anti-abortion front group, whose public face is a man named David DeLayden, who himself is being sued by the National Abortion Federation for setting up a fake biomedical facility so that he could conduct these scam interviews and scam videos where he got that stolen footage of various members of Planned Parenthood clinics, and began releasing these heavily edited videos out to the public, saying that Planned Parenthood was committing numerous illegal acts, including partial birth abortions, and that they were selling body parts for profit, which has since been debunked numerous times. In fact, every state, most of them being run by Republican administrations, that has actually launched an independent investigation into the Planned Parenthood clinics in their state to see if any of these allegations in those videos were true, they have all come back negative. There's been absolutely nothing in those videos that has been proven accurate. And how does that lead to the attack in Colorado Springs? That particular clinic was actually featured in one of those videos. Now, did Robert Deere see that video and say, I'm gonna go after this specific clinic? We don't know yet. But from what we're seeing right now, abortion itself is the reason why he went there and why he killed those people, including a police officer sent to take him down. Now, does David DeLayden and the Center for Medical Progress actually bear any responsibility for this? Yes and no. They do bear responsibility for creating a sense of justification for this level of violence. The moment they posted that very first video on a Fox News website, this comment was posted: "I'll pay 10 large to whomever kills Dr. Deborah Nucatola. She should be summarily executed. I'll do it myself if no one else does." Now, Dr. Nucatola was the woman who was featured in that very first video. Now, you can say that this was just a troll, but it bears a striking resemblance to a number of comments that followed and a number of articles that followed over the next weeks and months as those videos began to roll out. And after those videos were released, after they began hitting the internet, the attacks on Planned Parenthood clinics and abortion clinics and doctors who provide those services has gone up 9-fold. That is not a coincidence. Now, this isn't the first time that a group like this has come out and used a number of different tactics, including the idea of violence, if not specifically calling for it. A group called Operation Rescue, which has been around for quite a long time. They were connected to Scott Roeder, who killed George Tiller in his own church. And their president, Troy Newman, is actually secretary of the Center for Medical Progress. So this all bleeds together. Now, one of the other consequences of this type of violence is the lessening of women's ability to get an abortion if they so choose. During the legal timeline, there used to be over 2,000 clinics that performed this procedure, and by 2013 it was down to 582. And this was due to not only the violence, but also state administrations creating sham laws that had no other purpose than to shut these down, under the guise of being for women's health. So what do we do with this? How do we react to the fact that yet another, probably mentally disturbed person, went into a Planned Parenthood clinic and shot up a bunch of people under the idea that he was saving unborn babies? Numerous people hit up Twitter right after this attack saying, well, this guy's a hero and he sacrificed one life, but we should talk about the number of unborn children he saved because of this. Do you want to know how many unborn children he saved? 0. The women who might have been in that clinic getting an abortion performed that day are probably still getting that abortion performed. If not, they had already had it done, or they're dead, along with their babies. That clinic itself is staying open. Planned Parenthood as an organization has absolutely no consideration of stopping. They're dedicated to their cause, which is to give women the right to choose. On top of the fact that abortion still is only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does. 97% of the services that they give cover everything else from cancer screenings to sex education to all sorts of family planning services. So did Robert Deere actually solve anything? No. And I'm not just saying that because I'm someone who supports a woman's right to choose. Violence in itself is never the answer. If someone pointed out to me a house that was filled with people who were anti-abortion fanatics, people who were saying, I'm ready to go kill other people, or I'm ready to just go protest in front of these clinics, and I'm going to harm women who want to take that choice that they're legally allowed to do, I would not think it's okay to go run into that house and just kill everybody. People have a right to have their own opinion and to voice that opinion loudly. But in no cases do they have the right to then inflict bodily harm on someone because they disagree with their point of view. While it is completely understandable that the subject of abortion brings up very heated, passionate feelings in people, it is not something that they get to choose through the barrel of a gun. So the question for this week is, what do you think about this attack? Should it be labeled terrorism? Or do you just think it falls under general violence or mental problems? How do you think Planned Parenthood should respond? How do you think the politicians on the GOP side and the Democratic side should respond, if at all? Which, side note, all 3 Democrats who are running for president have sent out messages supporting Planned Parenthood and their condolences with the victims. None of the GOP have done that. Thanks again for watching another episode of the Motley Stew Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, either to the channel or the daily vlogs that I'm doing, you can do so here. You can also like, favorite, and share this video to anyone else you think might want to share in the discussion. Stay tuned for next week, and as always, here's one of the kids.
Here it goes. Whoa!
Did it splash
That was a nice one.
Nice one.
Watch it go.
But if you really want to go after terrorism, you really want to dismantle global terrorism, ISIS is still not your #1 target. If you're looking at body count, if you're looking at actual terrorist activity and power and evil, while ISIS is quite all of those things, Boko Haram is still more deadly. What I didn't really realize or wrap my head around was what I was battling underneath all of that was just another bout of depression. And once I kind of realized that, it hit me not harder, but just truer.